The giant screen filled the entire wall of the United Nations building. Everyone in the room stared at the creature on the display. It looked like a giant insect with hard shell covering its body. 6 eyes sat in a circle on what might be its head. The thing called itself High Commander Zekthar of the Vraxel Dominion. Claire Morrison sat in the front row. She was 32 years old and worked as an ambassador for Earth. Her red hair was tied back tight. She wore a simple blue suit. Next to her sat General Patrick Hayes. He was an old soldier, 61 years old with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He looked bored. He had seen aliens before. They always talked big and never did much. The alien spoke. The computers changed its words into every language on Earth at the same time. People of Earth, you have been judged. You have taken our space. You have ignored our warnings. You have treated us like we are weak. This ends today. The Vraxel Dominion controls 47 species. We rule 1,200 star systems. We are powerful. We declare war on the human race. You have 30 days. Give us your weapons. Bow to Vraxel rule. If you refuse, we will destroy you all. The screen went black. For 3 seconds, nobody made a sound. Then someone laughed. Then another person laughed. Soon the whole room was laughing. It was not nervous laughter. It was real laughter. The kind when someone tells a joke that is too funny to ignore. Claire put her hand over her mouth. She tried to stay professional, but she could not help it. A smile broke across her face. Next to her, General Hayes slapped his knee. His whole body shook with laughter. Even the Secretary General, a man named Luis Alvarez who ran the whole planet's government, had tears running down his face. General Hayes stood up. He pressed a button to open the communication line back to the alien ship. "High Commander," he said, still trying not to laugh. "High Commander, I think you have made a very big mistake." The alien's face came back on the screen. All 6 eyes looked confused. "There is no mistake. We have declared war. You will obey or die." Claire stood up and walked closer to the screen. "Commander Zekthar, can you tell me something? When do you think humans last fought a war? Our information says you fought each other 1,000 years ago. Since then, you have been peaceful. You are easy to conquer." The laughter got louder. Hayes walked up to stand beside Claire. He looked at the alien commander with a strange smile. "Commander, let me tell you a story. 1,000 years ago, we almost killed ourselves. We had nuclear bombs that could turn cities into dust. We had diseases made in labs that could kill millions. We made our planet so hot that ice caps melted and cities drowned. We came very close to going extinct. Very close." He paused and took a breath. "After that, we made a choice. We decided to stop fighting each other. We took apart our weapons. We made one government for the whole world. We went to space as one people. We promised to be peaceful. Then you have no weapons. You cannot fight. You will lose." Claire shook her head. "No, Commander. We stopped fighting each other. We did not forget how to fight." The room went quiet. The laughter stopped. The mood changed like a storm cloud covering the sun. Every person in the room knew what she meant. They all knew the history. They had all learned it in school. Hayes continued talking. His voice was different now. It was cold and hard. For 1,000 years we have remembered. Every child on Earth learns about the wars. We study how we fought. We learn about the mistakes we made. We remember the terrible things we did to each other. Not because we want to do them again, but because we never want to forget what we are capable of. The alien's shell seemed to shift. "You are lying. We have studied your world. You have no warships. You have no weapons in space. You have no armies. You train no soldiers because we did not need them," Claire said. "But Commander, do you know what we do have? We have 900 colonies on 300 different star systems. We have 400 billion people. Every single one of them knows how to read. Every single one of them studied war in school. We have factories that can build anything. We have technology that you cannot imagine. And most important, we remember. We remember everything." The alien leaned closer to its screen. "You are trying to scare me. Humans do not like violence. You are soft. You are weak. We have seen your culture. You cry over small things. You care about feelings. You will not fight." Hayes pulled up pictures on the screen. Old pictures from Earth's past. Burned cities. Mushroom clouds rising into the sky. Millions of soldiers marching in rows. Machines built only to kill. The pictures were horrible. They showed what humans had done to each other long ago. Commander, we do not like violence. That is true. We do not like it because we know what we become when we are violent. We chose peace because the other choice was too terrible. We stopped fighting because we understood what would happen if we continued. But we never forgot. Every human child learns about Stalingrad, about Hiroshima, about the siege of New Delhi and the final war. We remember everything. And if you make us remember too much, you will wish you had never met us. The alien was quiet for a long time. Its 6 eyes moved around, looking at things the humans could not see. Finally, it spoke again. The voice was different now. Less sure, you have 30 days. We will see if your words match your power. The screen went dark again. Secretary General Alvarez stood up slowly. His face was serious now. Call every colonial governor. Activate Protocol Omega. Begin the change immediately. Claire felt cold inside. She knew what Protocol Omega meant. All over Earth and all over the colonies, everything would change. Factories that built spaceships for trade would start building warships. Scientists who studied peaceful energy would start making weapons. Teachers would become trainers. Farmers would become soldiers. The whole human race would transform. It had all been planned. For 1,000 years, humanity had prepared for this day. They hoped it would never come. They built their civilization on peace, but they never forgot how to wage war. Every factory was designed to change quickly. Every ship was built to accept weapons. Every person was educated in military history. Just in case someone mistook kindness for weakness. Hayes turned to Claire. His face looked old and tired. 1,000 years. We had 1,000 years of peace. Now it ends because some alien race thought we were easy prey. They will learn, Claire said quietly. They will learn what happens when you wake up something that was sleeping. Around them, people were already moving, making calls, sending orders. The machinery of war was beginning to turn. It had been dormant for a millennium, waiting, ready. And now it was time. Claire thought about her daughter back home. The girl was only 7 years old. She went to a good school. She had friends. She had never known fear or hunger or war, but she had learned about them. Every child learned. They studied the old wars. They learned what their ancestors had done, not to make them proud, but to make them careful, to make them remember. Now that knowledge would be used. The Vraxil had no idea what they had started. They saw peaceful humans and thought they saw weakness. They saw cities without walls and thought they saw helplessness. They saw a civilization without armies and thought they saw prey. They were wrong. They were so very wrong. The humans had not built armies because they did not need them, but they could. They had not built weapons because they chose peace, but they remembered how. They had not trained soldiers because war was over. But every human knew the history. Every human had studied tactics and strategy. Every human understood what total war meant. And in 30 days, the Vraxil would discover their mistake. They would learn that humanity's 1,000-year peace was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of strength. The strength to choose peace when war was possible. The strength to remember horror without repeating it. The strength to be kind without being helpless. But when that choice was taken away, when violence was forced upon them, humanity would show the galaxy what they really were. They were the species that had nearly destroyed themselves and learned to stop. They were the species that had mastered the art of killing and then chose to build instead. They were the species that remembered everything and forgot nothing. The Vraxil were about to learn a hard lesson. The hardest lesson in the galaxy. Never mistake peace for weakness. Never assume that a sleeping giant is dead. And never ever declare war on humanity. Jake Peterson stood on the bridge of his ship and watched his crew work. 3 days ago, this had been a cargo ship called the Meridian's Hope. It carried food and supplies between Earth and the colony planets. Jake had been a simple transport captain. Now everything had changed. The ship looked different now. Workers had torn out the cargo holds and put in weapons. Big railguns sat where shipping containers used to be. Thick armor covered the hull. New shield generators hummed with power. The cargo ship was becoming a warship. And Jake was now an admiral. He was 47 years old with black hair turning gray. He had spent 20 years moving cargo through space. He had never fired a weapon in his life, but he had studied war. Every human had. In school, he had learned about ancient battles and modern tactics. He had studied how his ancestors fought. He thought he would never use that knowledge. He was wrong. "Chief, how long until we can fight?" Jake asked. He turned to his chief engineer, Nina Walsh. She was 31 years old and very smart with machines. For 10 years, she had made civilian power systems work better. Now she was turning those systems into weapons. Nina looked up from her computer tablet. 18 hours for the main weapons, sir. The railguns are almost ready. They used standard parts, so installation was quick. We are putting on the armor plating right now. The shield generators should work by tomorrow morning. Jake nodded. The speed amazed him. Humanity had spent 1,000 years building factories and shipyards. They could build anything. They could terraform entire planets. They could move billions of people between star systems. Now all that power was being turned toward war. It was frightening how fast it happened. Admiral, we have a call from Earth Defense Command, his communications officer said. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Fleet Admiral Gregory Nash. Nash was 73 years old. He had been retired, living quietly on Earth. Now he was in charge of all human military forces. Admiral Peterson, report your status, Nash said. His voice was clear and strong despite his age. Meridian's Hope will be ready to fight in 18 hours, sir. We are installing 6 railgun batteries and full defenses. The fusion reactor has been changed to give us military-grade power. Good. You are one of 78,000 ships being converted. The Vraxel were right about one thing. We had no military, but they did not understand how fast we could build one. In 30 days, we will have more warships than their entire empire. Jake felt the weight of those words. 78,000 ships, each one crewed by people who had lived their whole lives in peace. Each one commanded by officers who knew war only from books and computer simulations. But they knew. They all knew. The education was everywhere. The memories were preserved. Sir, what about training? Jake asked. Most of us have never fired a weapon. Every colony is running combat training right now, Nash replied. Virtual reality programs based on historical battles. We are also opening the military archives. Every citizen can access the tactical databases. Everything we know about war from 10,000 years of history is available. Jake understood. Humanity had saved everything. Not just the victories, also the defeats, the mistakes. Every lesson learned from every war ever fought. All of it was in the archives. All of it was ready to use. There is something else, Nash continued. His face looked grim. The Vraxel sent scouts to the Tau Ceti colony. 12 ships. They expected to find helpless civilians. What happened? Jake asked. The colonists used mining explosives and civilian shuttles. They loaded the shuttles with bombs and crashed them into the Vraxel ships. Suicide attacks. All 12 enemy ships were destroyed. We lost 40 volunteers who flew the shuttles. Jake felt cold. 40 people, regular civilians, using tactics from ancient Earth wars. Tactics that should have been forgotten, but they were not forgotten. Nothing was forgotten. The Vraxel are starting to understand what they are facing, Nash said. Our intelligence shows they are confused. They expected easy conquest. They found something very different. Ryan Cooper spoke up from the tactical station. He was the youngest officer on the bridge at 26 years old. Before the war, he had been a student studying military history. Admiral Nash, we have been studying Vraxel combat methods. Their tactics are efficient but simple. They rely on having better technology and more firepower. They do not adapt well when the enemy uses unexpected methods. Interesting, Nash replied. What do you suggest, Lieutenant? Hit-and-run attacks at first, Cooper said. We have more ships so we can be everywhere at once. Attack their supply lines. Make them spread out their forces. Then when they are stretched thin, we hit their command centers with everything we have. It is classic guerrilla warfare followed by a massive conventional assault. Straight from the 20th and 21st century military manuals. Nash smiled. It was not a happy smile. Do it, Lieutenant. All fleet commanders are free to use any tactics they think will work. We have 1,000 years of warfare knowledge. Use all of it. The transmission ended. Jake looked around his bridge. The crew was young. They had no combat experience. But they were human. They carried inside them the knowledge of every war their species had ever fought. They knew about ancient sword battles and modern orbital strikes. They knew about siege warfare and submarine tactics. They knew about psychological operations and supply line interdiction. They knew everything. Chief Walsh walked up with her tablet. Admiral, we finished the modifications early. We are ready for combat. Jake took a deep breath. Battle stations. Time to show the Vraxel what humanity remembers. Across human space, the same scene was playing out. Tens of thousands of ships being armed, millions of civilians becoming soldiers. Factories switching from peaceful production to weapons manufacturing. It was happening so fast because it had all been planned. For 1,000 years, humanity had prepared for this possibility. They hoped it would never come. But they were ready. Every ship was designed with weapon mounts already built in. They just needed the weapons installed. Every factory had the plans for military equipment stored and ready. Every citizen had military training as part of their basic education. It was all there, waiting. The Vraxil had studied humanity for years. They had watched the peaceful colonies. They had seen the trading ships and the research stations. They had seen a civilization without armies or weapons. They thought they understood. They were completely wrong. What they had not seen was the education system. Every human child spent years learning about war. They studied famous battles. They learned about tactics and strategy. They read about the mistakes that led to defeat and the innovations that brought victory. They learned about the horrors of war so they would never want to repeat them. The Vraxil had not seen the industrial capacity. Humanity could build anything. Their factories had made them rich and prosperous. Those same factories could produce weapons at an incredible rate. The shipyards that built colony ships could build warships. The chemical plants that made medicine could make explosives. The computer factories that made entertainment devices could make guidance systems for missiles. Most importantly, the Vraxil had not understood human psychology. They thought peaceful meant weak. They thought kindness meant helpless. They did not understand that humans had chosen peace because they knew what war really meant. They had experienced it. They had lived through it. They had nearly destroyed themselves with it, and they had decided to stop. But stopping was a choice. It was not an inability. And when someone took away that choice, when someone forced violence upon them, humanity would respond with everything they had learned in 10,000 years of warfare. Jake looked at the star map on his screen. It showed Vraxil territory in red and human territory in blue. Soon there would be battles across that map. Ships would fight. People would die. It was terrible. It was necessary. The Vraxil had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. Helm, set course for the first target, Jake ordered. All crew to battle stations. This is not a drill. We are going to war. The ship's engines powered up. Around them, other converted warships were doing the same. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. All crewed by former teachers and farmers and engineers. All commanded by people who had studied war but never fought. All carrying weapons that had not existed a week ago. The Vraxil had expected an easy victory. They had thought they would crush the peaceful humans quickly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. They were about to discover that humanity had not forgotten how to fight. They had just chosen not to. And now that choice had been taken from them. The war was beginning. And the galaxy would never be the same. Lisa Martinez gripped the arms of her command chair as her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. In front of them, 3 large Vraxil cargo ships floated in space. 6 smaller warships surrounded them as guards. Lisa was 38 years old. Before the war, she had worked in logistics. She moved supplies between colonies. She managed inventory and optimized shipping routes. She had never commanded a warship. Now she led a crew of former accountants, teachers, and engineers. Her ship was called the Defiant. 2 weeks ago, it had been a colony transport vessel. Target lock confirmed, Lieutenant Amy Brooks called out. She sat at the weapons station. Amy had been a high school physics teacher. Now she controlled enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Railguns are charged. Missiles are ready. The Vraxil escort ships reacted fast. They turned toward the human ship and powered up their weapons. But humanity had trained for this. They had run computer simulations based on centuries of naval warfare. They knew what to do. Execute attack pattern Delta 7, Lisa ordered. It was a pattern based on an ancient naval battle from Earth's history. The tactics had been updated for space combat, but the basic strategy was the same. The Defiant rolled to the side, making itself a smaller target. At the same time, it fired its railguns. Solid metal projectiles shot out at incredible speed. They punched through the shields of the lead Vraxil frigate. The alien ship shook as its hull broke open in multiple places. 2 more human ships appeared, dropping out of faster-than-light travel on both sides of the convoy. The Liberty's Call and the New Dawn opened fire together. The Vraxil convoy was surrounded. The Vraxil fought back with plasma weapons. Streams of superheated gas shot toward the human ships, but the humans had installed special armor. The outer layers burned away, protecting the ship underneath. The plasma lost its power as it hit layer after layer of ablative plating. "Target their command ship," Lisa ordered. "All weapons free." The Defiant launched 12 missiles. They streaked through space toward the largest cargo vessel. The Vraxil defensive systems tried to shoot them down. 6 missiles exploded before reaching their target, but the other 6 hit home. Nuclear fire bloomed in space. The command ship broke into pieces. Its reactor exploded, destroying 2 escort frigates that were too close. "Captain Martinez, the Vraxil are trying to communicate," the communications officer said. "Put them on screen." Lisa replied. A Vraxil commander appeared. Its shell was damaged and scorched. "You are using forbidden weapons, nuclear bombs, suicide tactics. You violate the rules of civilized warfare." Lisa felt something cold settle in her chest. "Rules, Commander, you declared war on us. You threatened to destroy our entire species. We are simply using the tools we know best. These are not forbidden to us. We never agreed to your rules. The Galactic Council will punish you for this. Then tell the Council that humanity fought wars before they had councils, before they had rules. We remember what total war means. You wanted war. Now you have it." She ended the transmission. "Destroy the remaining escorts. Let the cargo ships go." Amy looked up from her console. "Captain, those cargo ships have supplies for Vraxil colonies. Thousands of their civilians depend on them." "Exactly. Let them go home. Let them tell their people what they saw here. Let the Vraxil understand that we could have destroyed everything but chose not to. Not because we are weak, but because we decide when to kill and when to show mercy." The human fleet fired again. The 3 remaining escort ships were destroyed quickly and efficiently. The cargo vessels, which had no weapons, were allowed to escape. They jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared. Lieutenant Eric Stone pulled up a tactical display. "Captain, we are getting reports from other battles. Human forces have destroyed 27 Vraxil supply convoys in the last 12 hours. We lost 18 ships. The Vraxil lost over 200. Lisa studied the data. The pattern was clear. Humanity was fighting a war of numbers. They used unconventional tactics and overwhelming force to destroy the more advanced Vraxil fleet. It was brutal. It was effective. And it was exactly what the history books had taught them to do. "What is our next target?" she asked. "Fleet Command wants us to hit a Vraxil forward base in the Kepler system. Intelligence says it has light defenses. They are using it to launch attacks on our outer colonies. Set course. Maximum speed. And someone pull up the tactical files on planetary assault operations. I want everything from the Normandy invasion to the siege of New Singapore. All the historical records." The crew moved quickly. Around Earth and across all the colonies, millions of humans were doing the same thing. They were learning. They were adapting. They were remembering skills that had been sleeping for 1,000 years. Every battle taught them something new. Every engagement made them more efficient. They shared information instantly across their entire fleet. When one ship discovered an effective tactic, all ships knew about it within minutes. When one commander made a mistake, all commanders learned from it immediately. The Vraxil had better technology. Their ships were more advanced. Their weapons were more powerful. But humanity had numbers. They had coordination. And they had something the Vraxil did not expect. They had the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 years of warfare. Lisa thought about the history lessons she had learned as a child. She remembered studying ancient battles. She remembered learning about tactics that seemed outdated. She remembered thinking she would never need that knowledge. She had been wrong. Everything she had learned was useful. The ancient Greeks had taught her about phalanx formations and how to use terrain. The Romans had taught her about logistics and supply lines. The medieval generals had taught her about siege warfare. The modern commanders had taught her about combined arms tactics and strategic bombing. All of it applied to space warfare. The principles were the same. Control the high ground. Cut off enemy supplies. Strike at weak points. Maintain your own supply lines. Keep your forces coordinated. Never give the enemy time to rest. These lessons had been learned in blood over thousands of years, and now they were being used again. The Defiant accelerated toward its next target. Around it, dozens of other human ships were doing the same. They were merchant vessels and colony transports and research ships, all converted to warships, all crewed by people who had never expected to fight. All deadly. "Captain, we are receiving new orders from Fleet Command," the communications officer said. "They want all ships to begin Phase 2 of the campaign. We are switching from raiding to invasion. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. Raiding was one thing. Hit the enemy and run away. Invasion was different. Invasion meant taking territory. It meant holding ground. It meant longer battles with higher casualties. But it also meant the war was progressing. Humanity was not just defending. They were advancing. Acknowledge the orders, she said. All hands prepare for extended combat operations. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. They were scared. She could see it in their faces. But they were also determined. They had learned about their ancestors. They knew what humans were capable of. They knew the history. They knew the cost. And they were willing to pay it. The Vraxel had made a terrible mistake. They had seen a peaceful civilization and thought they saw weakness. They had seen people who valued life and thought they saw cowards. They had seen a species that had not fought a war in 1,000 years and thought they saw easy prey. But peace was not weakness. Valuing life did not mean being unable to take it, and 1,000 years without war did not mean forgetting how to wage it. The Vraxel were learning these lessons now. They were learning them in the wreckage of their ships. They were learning them in the ruins of their bases. They were learning them with every battle they lost. And soon they would learn the final lesson. That when humanity went to war, they did not do it halfway. They committed fully. They used every resource. They employed every tactic. They sacrificed whatever was necessary. Because that was what total war meant. And total war was all that humanity had ever known how to fight. The Defiant jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward its next battle. Behind it, the wreckage of Vraxel ships tumbled through space. A warning. A message. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. High Commander Zekthar stood in the command center of his flagship. The ship was called Eternal Dominance. It was the pride of the Vraxel fleet. But right now, watching the tactical displays, Zekthar felt no pride. Only fear. 3 weeks had passed since the war began. 3 weeks since he had declared that humanity would be crushed. Now the Vraxel Dominion was losing. Not just losing. Being destroyed piece by piece. Commander, we lost another supply fleet in the Proxima sector, his second-in-command reported. Sub-Commander Vrilnak was a loyal officer. But even loyal officers could not hide their fear anymore. The humans attacked from multiple directions at once. They destroyed our escorts and vanished before our reinforcements arrived. How many ships did we lose? Zekthar asked. 17 Vraxel vessels destroyed. The humans lost only 4. Commander, they do not fight like any species we have encountered. They accept losses that would break other races. And they change their tactics after every battle. They learn too fast. Zekthar looked at the strategic map. It told a terrible story. In 3 weeks, humanity had built over 80,000 warships. Most were crude conversions of civilian vessels. They still had civilian paint under the new armor. But they worked. They were effective. Terrifyingly effective. The humans did not fight fair. They used tactics that the Galactic Council had banned long ago. Nuclear weapons deployed without hesitation. Kinetic strikes that violated planetary protection laws. Biological attacks against food supplies. Psychological warfare that broke enemy morale. And worst of all, they fought with perfect coordination. Every human colony, every ship, every soldier moved as one mind with billions of bodies. Commander, we have a transmission from the Galactic Council, the communications officer announced. The hologram showed Counselor Arnath. The counselor was from a species called the Telnari. They were known for their diplomatic skills. High Commander Zekthar, the Council has reviewed reports from the human conflict. We are disturbed by what we have learned. Zekthar straightened. Finally, someone understood. The humans are using weapons that violate every convention, every rule of civilized warfare. They must be sanctioned. The counselor's expression was hard to read on an alien face, but it seemed almost sad. High Commander, the Council is not disturbed by human tactics. We are disturbed that you provoked them. For 1,000 years, humans have been model citizens. They were peaceful. They shared their resources. They helped other species. And now you reminded them what they once were. But they are breaking treaties. They never signed those treaties, High Commander. Humanity kept their own military rules. Rules based on their history. The Council allowed this because we believed their peaceful nature made those rules unnecessary. We were wrong. You were wrong. Then the Council must stop them. The Council tried to negotiate with human leaders. Ambassador Morrison was very clear. Humanity will accept only total Vraxel surrender. They said they will continue this war until the Vraxel Dominion no longer exists. Zekthar felt something he had never known before. Real fear. That is genocide. No, Commander. That is conquest. The same conquest you tried to do to them. The difference is that humanity has 1,000 years of experience in total war. Every trick, every tactic, every strategy ever used by any human culture. They saved all of it. They studied all of it. And now they use all of it against you. The transmission ended. Zekthar stood in silence. He was beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. Sub-Commander Vrilnak approached carefully. Commander, we intercepted human communications. They are not hiding their strategies. In fact, they are broadcasting them to us. What do you mean? The humans are sending educational materials to our ships, historical records, analysis of their past battles. They are teaching us how they fight, and explaining that we cannot win. Zekthar opened one of the transmissions. It was a documentary about something called the Second World War, a conflict from Earth's ancient past. The images were horrible. Entire cities turned to ash. Populations mobilized for industrial warfare. Nations fighting until they were destroyed. The narration was calm, almost gentle. It explained how humans had fought that war, the tactics they used, the sacrifices they made, the innovations driven by desperation, the willingness to do anything to win. At the end came a simple message. This was one war among many. We have fought thousands like it. We remember them all. We learned from them all. Surrender now while your species still exists. It was psychological warfare on a scale Zekthar had never imagined. The humans were not just fighting battles. They were attacking the Vraxel mind, showing them exactly how outmatched they were, making them afraid. Commander, morale is collapsing, Vrilnak reported. Ship crews are requesting transfers away from combat. Colonial governors are asking if they can surrender. Zekthar made his decision. Open a channel to Ambassador Morrison. Offer to negotiate. When the human ambassador appeared, her face showed no emotion. High Commander, we expected your call. Ambassador, the Vraxel Dominion requests a ceasefire. We are ready to negotiate terms. Morrison nodded. The terms are simple. Complete shutdown of all Vraxel military forces. Withdrawal from all conquered territories. Payments to repair damage to affected species. And supervision by the Galactic Council for the next century. Those terms would destroy us. No, Commander. Those terms will rebuild you. We learned long ago that peace requires more than just ending war. It requires creating systems that prevent war from starting again. We will help you build those systems. But first you must surrender, and if we refuse, Morrison's face did not change. Then we continue. And in 6 months the Vraxel Dominion will be a memory in history books. We have run the computer models, Commander. We know exactly how this ends if you do not surrender. Do not force us to prove it. Zekthar looked at his displays, at the shrinking map of Vraxel territory, at the casualty numbers growing every day, at the human forces that got larger and stronger with each battle. He thought about his people, about the Vraxel colonies that depended on supplies that no longer came, about the civilians who lived in fear of human attacks, about the future of his species. The Vraxel had ruled for centuries. They had conquered 47 species. They had built an empire, and in 3 weeks, humanity had brought it all to the edge of destruction. Not because humans were more advanced, but because they remembered how to fight. Really fight. Total war. War without limits or mercy. War that ended only when one side could no longer continue. Zekthar had studied humanity before the war. He had read about their peaceful nature, their cooperation, their kindness to other species. He had seen weakness. He had been completely wrong. The peace was not weakness. It was strength. The strength to choose not to fight when you absolutely could. The strength to remember horror without repeating it. The strength to be kind while being capable of terrible violence. And when someone took away that choice, when someone forced humanity back into war, they discovered what humans really were. They were the species that had nearly destroyed themselves and learned to stop. They were the species that had mastered killing and then chose to build instead. They were the species that forgot nothing. "We accept your terms," Zekthar said quietly. Morrison nodded. "Ceasefire begins immediately. We will send representatives to coordinate the surrender. Commander, you made a mistake, but it does not have to be a fatal one. We will help you rebuild. We will help you find peace. But it will be real peace this time, not the peace of conquest, the peace of cooperation." The transmission ended. Zekthar turned to his crew. "Send the ceasefire order to all Vraxil forces. The war is over. We lost." Around the command center, officers began transmitting the orders. The Vraxil Dominion, which had seemed so powerful just weeks ago, was surrendering. Surrendering to a species they had thought was weak. A species that had proven to be anything but. Zekthar thought about the future, about what would come next. The humans had won, but they had not destroyed. They had offered terms. They had offered to help rebuild. Maybe there was something to learn from that. Maybe there was wisdom in their approach. The war was over. The lesson had been learned. Never mistake peace for weakness. Never assume kindness means helplessness, and never ever declare war on humanity. 6 months after the war ended, Ambassador Claire Morrison stood in the rebuilt Vraxil capital city. The last signatures were being placed on the peace treaty. The war had lasted 34 days. The reconstruction would take decades. General Patrick Hayes stood beside her. His uniform now showed the rank of Supreme Commander of all Terran forces. They had won completely. The galaxy had noticed. High Commander Zekthar approached them. His shell was polished but still showed scars from the war. Ambassador Morrison. "General Hayes, I must ask you something." Claire nodded. "Speak freely, Commander. Why did you stop?" "You could have destroyed us completely. Your forces were overwhelming. Instead, you accepted our surrender, and now you are helping rebuild our infrastructure. Why?" Hayes smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Because that is what we learned, Commander. 1,000 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves. We learned that winning a war is not the same as winning a peace. We learned that true strength is not just the ability to destroy, it is also the wisdom to rebuild." Claire continued. "When humanity ended our internal wars, we made a choice. We would never fight unless forced, and if forced, we would fight to win. But winning meant more than military victory. It meant creating lasting peace. But you used such terrible weapons, such brutal tactics." "Yes," Hayes said. "We did. Because you gave us no choice. You thought our peaceful nature meant weakness. You thought 1,000 years of peace had made us soft. But, Commander, those 1,000 years were not spent forgetting. They were spent remembering. Every human child learns about war, not to glorify it, but to understand it, so that if war ever came again, we would be ready." Zekthar was quiet for a moment. "We have been talking with the Galactic Council. They want to understand human military methods. They say the entire galaxy must learn from what happened here." Claire nodded. "We are willing to teach, but not military tactics, Commander. We will teach what we learned from 1,000 years of peace, how to build systems that prevent war, how to create real cooperation between species, how to remember the horrors of conflict so clearly that war becomes unthinkable. And if another species threatens violence, then we will do what we did to you," Hayes said simply. "We will remind them what humanity is capable of when pushed. But we hope, Commander, that your experience will serve as a lesson, that the galaxy will understand that peace is not weakness, that choosing not to fight is not the same as being unable to fight. Across the chamber, human engineers worked alongside Vraxil technicians. They were rebuilding power systems together. Human medical teams treated Vraxil wounded. Human agricultural experts helped restore farming colonies that had been damaged by the war. It was the same organizational capacity that had won the war. The same coordination, the same efficiency, now turned toward reconstruction instead of destruction. Major Ryan Cooper approached with a tablet. He had been promoted during the war. "Ambassador, we completed the economic assessment you requested. The full cost of the war." Claire took the tablet and read the numbers. They were huge. Humanity had lost 12,000 ships, over 2 million lives. The Vraxil had lost 5 times that. The economic damage ran into trillions of credits. But there was another number: the cost of rebuilding. Humanity was spending as much to rebuild the Vraxil as they had spent on the war itself. "It is expensive," Claire said quietly, "but cheaper than another war." Admiral Jake Peterson joined the group. He was overseeing the process of turning warships back into civilian vessels. Both human and Vraxil ships. The last of the warships have been converted back. It is strange. We spent months building a war machine. Then we took it apart just as quickly. "That is the point, Jake," Hayes said. "We proved we can fight. Now we prove we can stop. Both are equally important." Secretary General Alvarez appeared via hologram from Earth. "Ambassador Morrison, the Galactic Council has made a decision. They are offering humanity a permanent seat on the Council. They also want us to oversee peacekeeping operations throughout the galaxy." Claire looked at Hayes. "That is a big responsibility, Mr. Secretary." "It is. The Council believes humanity has shown both the capability to wage war and the wisdom to pursue peace. They want us to serve as guarantors of galactic stability. What are the conditions that we maintain the ability to respond to threats, but that we continue to make diplomatic solutions the priority? That we share our historical knowledge of warfare with other species so they understand the costs, and that we help build systems to prevent future conflicts." Hayes nodded slowly. "In other words, we become the galaxy's memory. We remember the horrors of war so others do not have to experience them." "Exactly." Claire turned to Zekathar. "Commander, what do you think? Can the Vraxil work with humanity in this role?" The Vraxil commander's face was hard to read, but his voice held something that might have been respect. "Ambassador, 3 months ago I would have said no. Today, I believe the Vraxil have learned what the rest of the galaxy must learn. That humanity's 1,000-year peace was not weakness. It was strength. The strength to choose peace when war was possible. If humanity can teach that lesson to the galaxy, then yes, we will work with you." Claire looked around at the rebuilding efforts, at the cooperation between species, at the hope emerging from the ashes of conflict. "Then we accept the Council's offer," she said, "but with one condition, that this is the last war humanity ever has to fight, that from now on, we work together to make warfare obsolete across the entire galaxy." Hayes put a hand on her shoulder. "That is an ambitious goal, Claire. So was surviving 1,000 years of peace while remembering how to wage war. If we can do that, we can do anything." As the treaty signing concluded, delegates from dozens of species watched humanity with new understanding. They had learned what the Vraxil learned too late: that humanity had not forgotten how to fight. They had simply chosen not to, and that choice, backed by the memory of 10,000 years of warfare, made them both the most dangerous and most valuable allies the galaxy had ever known. The 1,000-year peace had ended, but in its place, humanity was building something better. A peace not based on forgetting violence. A peace based on remembering it so well that no one would ever want to repeat it. Across the galaxy, species that had once seen humanity as weak now understood the truth. The humans had not spent 1,000 years becoming soft. They had spent 1,000 years becoming wise. And wisdom backed by the knowledge of how to destroy was the most powerful force in the universe. Claire walked through the rebuilt streets of the Vraxel capital. Children played in parks that had been battlefields just months ago. Markets sold goods from both human and Vraxel worlds. Schools taught students about cooperation instead of conquest. It would take time, decades, maybe centuries, but humanity had time. They had patience. They had learned how to build peace one step at a time. They had learned that the hardest battles were not fought with weapons. They were fought with understanding and cooperation, and the willingness to help even former enemies. Hayes joined her as she walked. Thinking about the future? Always. We changed the galaxy, Patrick. In 34 days, we showed them what humanity really is. Now, we have to show them what we can become. We will. One day at a time. One treaty at a time. One peaceful resolution at a time. Until war becomes something the galaxy remembers but never repeats. Claire smiled. That is the goal. That has always been the goal. Not to forget how to fight, but to make fighting unnecessary. They walked together through the city. Behind them, human and Vraxel workers continued their reconstruction. Around them, the galaxy was changing, learning, understanding. The war had been terrible, but it had taught a lesson that would echo for generations. That peace was not the absence of the ability to fight. It was the choice not to. And humanity, having made that choice once and been forced to break it, would make sure the galaxy learned from their experience. Never again would peace be mistaken for weakness. Never again would kindness be confused with helplessness. The galaxy had seen what humanity was capable of. Now they would see what humanity chose to be. And that choice, more than any weapon or tactic or strategy, was what would keep the peace. Not the peace of fear, not the peace of exhaustion, but the peace of understanding. The peace of cooperation. The peace that came from remembering war so well that no one ever wanted to experience it again. The 1,000-year peace had ended with laughter. It would begin again with wisdom. And this time, the whole galaxy would laugh together. Not at the threat of war, but at the joy of peace.